G'day everyone. I think this means that we've started. Excellent. I'm seeing some nods from folk that are well versed in running webinars. We're just going to leave it probably for another 60 seconds just to make sure that we have the majority of the audience in the room, and then we'll kick off in anger. We do have 90 minutes, so a couple of minutes on the front end to make sure we have everyone here is I think will be absorbed into the broader discussion. So we'll just wait yeah, another 60 seconds. Okay. Marina, thank you for the question, the opening question for the panel. I thought I was meant to be asking the questions this evening, but it looks like you've got the first one in there. So as we start this evening, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we all meet tonight. I am in Nudgee in Brisbane, which is on Yagara and Turrbal land, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, especially any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people that may be on the call this evening. So thank you and welcome for joining us tonight in what I hope will be a series of conversations, important conversations about the ASEG and our future. Tonight specifically we'll be focusing on the challenges and opportunities for geophysics, and I'm really delighted that we have the panelists here tonight to be a part of that conversation. So you'd really have to be living under a bit of a rock not to realise that that both as a society and as a profession, we face some real critical issues. Our geophysics education is under pressure, our membership as a society is in decline, and earth sciences is viewed, and I'm just going to use this language today, as a dirty profession. So we can discuss the perceptions of that later this evening, but these are real challenges that we face as a society and as a profession. And you know, on top of these significant headwinds, we're actually on the precipice of a complete reconfiguring of our world economy around electrification and renewable fuels in our transition to net zero. And the opportunities presented to geophysics is actually potentially enormous. So the question for us all tonight is, how does the ASEG navigate these waters to create opportunity from challenge and value from risk? And I'm joined by a really diverse cohort of ASEG members as panelists this evening to really challenge and provoke us to think differently about you know, where we've come from and where we need to go. So I'll just set a couple of ground rules first, which is I really hope that we will have some challenging and thought-provoking discussion, and I really hope that you join us in the chat to create a place where you can create your insights or provide your insights, but also ask questions. So please use that chat function to help in enriching the conversation this evening. But I'd ask you to you know, let's challenge and provoke, but let's keep it respectful. And you know, I love a sporting metaphor. Let's play the ball, not the person. So if we can do that, I reckon we'll have a very successful evening. And so what I would like to do before I kick off the panel in anger is really introduce each of our panelists, and I will read a short bio on each of them, because I think their experiences and perspectives are really important to understand, because we'll get a really good sense of where their insights and observations and and solutions for the future are coming from. So we'll start first with Anne Tomlinson. So Anne completed her geology and geophysics degrees at the University of Auckland in early 2004. After 2 years as a graduate geologist with Newmont, working at mine sites in North Queensland and Western Australia, she joined Southern Geoscience in Perth as a geophysicist. She has spent the last 16 years at SGC, the last 9 of which were as principal geophysicist, and in August this year, she was appointed as managing director. So congratulations, Anne. That's a fantastic career milestone. Anne has been an active member of the ASEG and AIG her entire career, including 2.5 years as ASEG WA branch president and 5 years as the AIG Federal Councillor for membership. She's passionate about geoscience outreach and is actively involved in the CSIRO's STEM Professionals in Schools program at the local primary school where her 5 and 7-year-old daughters attend. Next up this evening, we have Professor Pete Betts. So Pete is a professor of structural geophysics and tectonics in the School of Earth, Atmosphere and Environment at Monash University. He's also the Associate Dean of Graduate Research, a role where he manages the postgraduate research program in the Faculty of Science. Pete has taught applied geophysics for 20 years to 3rd and 4th year level units and to industry. His research interests are diverse and include continental evolution and dynamics, the transition from continental rifting to ocean formation, subduction dynamics, and structural geophysics. Pete is also the president of the Geological Society of Australia. So next up, we have Mossab Kadimi Zaidi. Zaidi, did I nail that, Mossab? I'm really sorry, mate. I was absolutely practicing that beforehand. And I've stumbled over the line, mate. I've dropped the baton and I've bloody stumbled. I'm sorry about that. But Mossab is a PhD student at the University of South Australia, and his project is affiliated with the MINEX CRC. Mossab's research focus is value of information in mineral exploration, which he's very excited about. Trained as a petroleum geophysicist, his main focus used to be hydrocarbon exploration, working on numerous projects across the continents. Mossab arrived in Australia as a migrant 6 years ago, and he feels fortunate to have worn different hats from lab technician to WA state manager and from employee to business owner. This diversity in his career turned his attention from hydrocarbon onto minerals, and now he's focused on his research. Mossab believes that geophysics has an enormous potential in reducing uncertainty in mineral exploration. Reflecting on his own experience, he states that the exploration value approach implemented by the hydrocarbon industry in collecting the right type and volume of information for decision making has proved the massive role of geophysics and subsurface discoveries, amongst others. Next up, we have Dr. Avett Pajam Jamani. Dr. Jamani is a geophysicist with over 25 years of experience. She specialises in potential field data, processing and enhancement, and provides expert advice to explorationists for the discovery of new natural resources in Australia. Avett completed a bachelor degree in science at the University of Yaoundé, a PhD in geophysics from the University of Paris 11, if I can read my Roman numerals correctly, and an MBA from the Australian Institute of Business. She has worked in academia and industry sectors and joined Geoscience Australia in 2016, working in a high-performing team to provide pre-competitive data sets to the public and inform decision-making by the government. Avett is currently working with the offshore energy system team using potential field data to complement the mapping of igneous rocks revealed by seismic interpretation. Avett joined the ASEG in 1999 and is the current treasurer of the society. Next up, we have Dr. Ted Tyne. So Ted's been actively involved in the ASEG from the foundation years as co-organiser of the ASEG's first conference and exhibition in 1979, serving on federal executives, ASEG conference organising committees, guest editor of Exploration Geophysics, president from 2019 to 2020, and currently as publications chair. Ted's early mineral exploration geophysics career in the Geological Survey of New South Wales in the 70s led to teaching and collaborative research with industry and executive leadership positions in government and industry. Ted retired from the South Australian government in 2017 and 12 years as head of the Minerals Resource Agency and South Australia's PACE Minerals Exploration Program. Or do I say pace? Doesn't matter. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. Next up, we have current ASEG President, Dr. Kate Robertson. Kate is the current president of the Australian Society of Exploration Geophysicists. She has been volunteering for the ASEG for 8 years and has served as the South Australian Northern Territory President and was previously the chair of the ASEG Communications and Promotions Committee, where she launched the monthly newsletter and ran the social media before transitioning into the president-elect role and onto her presidential term. She's a senior geophysicist at the Geological Survey of South Australia and the State Government Department, specialising in using magnetotellurics to understand the deep signatures of mineral systems. She completed her PhD at the University of Adelaide in 2016, and in her spare time, which there's very little of, she enjoys running. And I know she has very little of it because she spends 6 a.m. meetings with me on Sunday mornings instead of running. Dr. Tim Dean. So Tim, who I'm pleased could join us tonight, is a specialist geophysicist for BHP Coal, which he joined in 2019. Prior to joining BHP, he was a research fellow within the Department of Exploration Geophysics at Curtin University. This followed an extensive career at Schlumberger, Western Geco, Western Geophysical, in a variety of roles, including marine and land field operations, software development, and research located in Saudi Arabia, England, Norway, and Australia. Following his final position with Schlumberger as Principal Research Geophysicist at the Schlumberger Fibre Optic Technology Centre, Tim joined Hawkeye Technology, a division of Sony, as a project advisor for the introduction of goal line technology into UEFA Champions League, which is a story for another night, but I think that sounds pretty interesting. He also conducted research into the use of sensors within sports as diverse as cricket, AFL and volleyball. Tim has an honours degree in geophysics from Curtin University and a PhD in physics from the University of New South Wales. His research interests include land acquisition, particularly vibrosized sources, land data processing and distributed fibre optic sensing. Okay, one more intro. And then we will get to the good stuff. So last but absolutely not least, we have Marina Costello, who is the branch head of the Minerals System branch at Geoscience Australia, and she leads the minerals component of the 125 million 4-year extension and expansion of Geoscience Australia's Exploring for the Futures program. Marina joined Geoscience Australia in 2007 as a senior exploration geophysicist and has worked in areas as diverse as mineral exploration, groundwater, critical infrastructure, data science, earthquake monitoring, and has contributed to international nuclear monitoring and space weather. Marina represents the Geology and Geography cluster on the board of Science and Technology Australia and represents diversity and inclusion on the Australian Geoscience Council. Marina joined the Federal Executive in 2015, became Secretary in 2016 and President in 2018. Marina was awarded the Silver Medal in the Australian Society of Exploration Geophysicists in 2019. She is passionate about diversity, women in STEM and Indigenous employment. So panel, welcome. That is the most amount of talking I'm going to do tonight. And so it is absolutely now over to all of you. As I say, please, audience, get into the chat if you have any questions. We're really keen to have your insights and your questions. So feel free to get in there. But first of all, we're going to ask Ted as the panelist that has absolutely had the longest history with the ASEG. Can you tell us about your insights into what are the key things that made us as a society successful for the last 50 years? And do you think they're the things that will work to keep us successful for the next 50?
Okay, thanks, Emma. Rather than call myself a retired geophysicist, I'd rather say I'm a passionate veteran of exploration geophysics. And I'd like to just reflect right at the very beginning at the beginning of saying, well, what are the key things that have made us successful over the last 50 years? At foundation, the founding members of the ASEG established 4 key aims for the society. And those aims haven't changed throughout the last 50 years. They're still as relevant today as they were at foundation back in 1970, 71. I'd like to just reflect on the first two of those because they're the most important, and they are to promote the science of geophysics and specifically exploration geophysics throughout Australia, and to foster fellowship and cooperation between geophysicists. So from the foundation days of our society through our 5 decades, a voice for practicing geophysicists has always been very important. And that is a voice to propel our science, to share knowledge, new concepts, and to build a culture of fellowship and cooperation between Australian geophysicists. And Australian geophysicists, right from the early days of our society through the last 5 decades, have been leading the development and practice of exploration geoscience, particularly exploration geophysics, in the search for minerals, petroleum, coal deposits. And really, this is all about discovery as well, discovery of new resources. But also from the earliest days of the ASEG, our society has also fostered the development and application of near-surface exploration geophysics for shallow engineering, for environmental, groundwater applications, and also for the application of geophysics to the understanding of Earth and planetary structure and evolution. Our society's voice over the last 50 years has really been melded through our ASEG forums, our technical meetings, our conferences, through our scholarly publications and magazines, also our great social events and formal functions, and also the acknowledgement of outstanding science and practice by our members and industry partners through our annual ASEG Honours and Awards. So reflecting specifically on some key things, key measures that made our society successful for more than 50 years. First of all, and probably most important, 51 years of outstanding contributions by volunteers. Volunteers from across our membership at all levels of leadership and operations of the federal and state branches, in the organisation of our flagship conference and exhibitions, and contributing and leading the development of our scholarly journal, our magazine, and other publications. Another really, really important measure has been an outstanding meticulous business management of our not-for-profit society over those 51 years, always delivering good, solid financial results. We've been very diligent as a society in managing the money and putting it to best use for the benefit of the membership. 51 years of publishing exploration geophysics, 41 years of successful ASEG exploration geophysics conferences. The most recent one, incredibly innovative, was actually our 28th ASEG conference, but our 3rd AEGC conference held in a virtual world. But a key part of all of those the conference successes, has also been developing and building positive partnerships with other societies such as PESA and AIG, GSA, SEG, EAGE, and the Korean and Japanese SEGs, and more. We're celebrating this year 33 years of publishing the ASEG's flagship Geoscience magazine, 31 years of direct support to exploration geophysics research and training at the honours, MSc and PhD levels through the ASEG Research Foundation. It's amazing that this has been going consistently for 31 years. It's now contributed through ASEG contributions and donations, more than 1.5 million to university undergraduates and postgrads, more than 100 highly successful research projects with outcomes supporting exploration success. This has been a critical investment by the ASEG and the foundation over 30 years to bring forward a pipeline of the best exploration geophysicists that have been trained in our universities. Probably the last key point there is over 50 years establishing a great culture within the society, a passion for science and practice of exploration geophysics, which is absolutely amply demonstrated at our conferences and our technical meetings, where we're sharing the innovations and the new ideas always across our membership and with our fellow geophysicists. Finally, I think we should acknowledge our most recent success. At the onset of COVID-19, at the COVID-19 pandemic, the ASEG has had some outstanding leadership and collaboration and personal commitments across our society, leadership in our membership to make the transition really work to a new era of online conferencing and meetings. In my view, the ASEG has done an absolutely brilliant job at delivering on COVID safe for our membership and keeping the business of our society and the sharing of the latest insights and knowledge on exploration geophysics flowing to our members. So what kind of changes have you seen? What do we do now? What goes forward for the next 50 years? What we've done in the last 50 years is going to work for maybe a few years, maybe 5 or 10 years, but we need to now strongly reflect on the changing business situation globally, the move to zero emissions, the opportunities for applying our science, the breadth of our science to addressing climate and to meld with climate change science. We need to look at broadening to meet the needs of our industry in the face of zero emissions world. Thanks. Hand back to you, Emma.
Ted, I think what really resonated with your comments there for me, in particular, that our volunteer contributions. We are a volunteer organisation, and this is one of the things that I think a lot about is how we create a sustainable society that our volunteers can continue to contribute to. So I definitely think that'll be one of the successes we've had in the last 50 years on the back of our volunteer contributions will absolutely be the thing that will underpin our success for the next 50 years as well, notwithstanding all the things we'll need to adapt to. So in that context of how we need to adapt and what is the biggest risk for our survival, I wonder, Anne, if you've got any insights or commentary from your perspective on, what is the biggest risk to the ASEG and how will we survive that?
Thanks, Emma. Thanks, Ted. I mean, the first thing I think, what's the biggest risk? Having a membership base, I suppose. That's probably one of the elephants in the room in terms of, we have the existing geophysicists, we have our membership base. One of the big topics that, I'm talking to a lot of people about is where are the next geophysicists coming? Obviously, we've had a few institutions, departments across universities in Australia and internationally closing down. So I think that's, in terms of having a flow through of new people coming through, that's probably what's really sticking out to me in terms of that. And then just, keeping that continuity of trained professionals in the industry. On the flip side, we've got such an opportunity. I might be jumping ahead to another question here, but in terms of the, everything we're talking about, net zero, electrification, decarbonisation, to me, there's going to be a huge demand for our technical expertise. So there's a bit of a mismatch there in terms of those two issues.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And Pete, I wonder from your perspective of, being a professor in the university, how are you seeing that pipeline of talent come through? Is that the key risk to our survival, or is it something else?
Oh no, I would have put the human capital as the biggest risk. The pipeline is dire. It's actually dire across the geosciences in general, but I think geophysics is particularly vulnerable at the moment. I can speak from a Monash perspective. So 29 years ago, when I did an undergraduate, I could do up to 6 geophysics subjects at third year level, a major. Over that period, since then, it's whittled down to 1 third year subject and was almost cut completely last year. And this is from a university that has a long-standing track record in producing geophysicists. And the reason why it was cut was because basically the university administration looks across the spreadsheet and says less than 20 students in that subject, time to consider it. And we salvaged it by doing 2 things. We took the geophysics course out of geology, so out of earth sciences, and put it in a mixed unit with environmental science. So, and then we changed the curriculum so that 50% of it was looking at applied geophysical approaches to environmental problems. And so we sort of just got enough students over the line to salvage it. And we were instructed from that by our head of school who was looking to save it. So the pipeline is significant, and the pipeline is problematic because I don't think young people really understand the role that geophysics plays in society, and I think as a broader earth science community, we've been really ordinary at communicating that to people outside of what I call the earth science echo chamber. We're good at telling each other why we're good and why we're important, etc., and we're not very good at telling the rest of the world. It's partially linked to our transactional way of communicating. So we're very good at telling people what we do, but not why. And that's the important message. And if we want to, if we want some role models, so that go and look at the biomedical group, they'll tell you what are you doing. They'll go, we're finding a cure for cancer. They're not really doing that. They're mucking around in some lab with a test tube and some enzyme and protein. And so we need to be better at that. And I'll just make this one last point. I think the universities have not helped the situation very well because we were presented some data from our education committee last week, and we have a first year subject, which is capturing the subject that captures people to go into geophysics or geology or to environmental science and atmospheric sciences. And of the students who don't choose that subject, 61% of them go back into biology. And so there's some special link between what people do in biology and what they do in earth sciences. And by comparison, 1% of the students who did our first year unit and didn't continue on with it went back to physics. And so our school is full of physicists and mathematicians and geochemists who use the earth, and the students that are coming in are really interested in biology. So there's some disconnect right at the start of the pipeline, and we have to, as a broad earth science community, address this really quickly because we're losing a generation.
And do you think the root cause there is storytelling?
Yeah, I do. I don't think we tell our story at all. Even if you go to the JobSeek website in the federal government and look up geophysicists, no 10-year-old to 18-year-old would think of that as a fun career. Just the way it's written. Yeah, and same with geology as well. It's the same thing. It's like you will do a bunch of tasks. Whereas other careers, they tell you what your life will look like. So we've got to really this is the bit that we have to nail, and we have to get into schools to help sell that story. Anyway, I'll let others have a
No, that's awesome. I think, Marina, was there something you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I completely support everything Pete said. And unfortunately, I'm towards the other end where I'm seeing the great resignation happening. Our COVID situations led a lot of us to rethink our priorities, and great geophysicists don't retire, like Ted mentioned earlier, but we do tend to do other things, and we move away from the geophysics or the hard geophysics, if you like. And I think that's another emerging risk, that we've got people that insist on doing a 9-to-5 job or a 2 weeks on, 1 week off, whereas we're moving a lot of people into this area where they want to be, you know, just come in and do a job and then leave and go on holidays, have flexible working, which is all great, and it worked for us during COVID. But I don't think as an industry we've caught up with that. We still want to do it the way we've always done it. We think we know how that works, and we're going to have to really change that up. So more consultants, more bringing in specialised contractors. One person can't now do everything. I know I can program in 5 languages, but there's a 6th and a 7th and an 8th. I'm not going to keep up. I'm also not a great storyteller or a marketer, so there's so much to our jobs that we are tending to see a lot of people stepping away from the, you know, the coalface geology and geophysics that they used to do, and into maybe leadership positions or WHS or, you know, program management. So we're losing people at either end, and then we've got the leaky pipeline in the middle, but that might be a conversation for a later time.
Yeah, well, as I say, this will be a series of conversations, and we can certainly pick up on that one in more depth at the next time. I'm going to go to one of our audience members' questions here and see, Tim, in this context of the biggest risk for our survival. John Hughes, his perspective here is that, especially in the petroleum industry, it appears that the decreasing relevance of geophysics, particularly seismic, as part of their business is the biggest risk to the profession of geophysics. As someone with a passion for seismic acquisition, would you agree that that decreasing relevance is one of our biggest risks, or do you have a different perspective?
It's an interesting point. I would, from my experience, I kind of agree with the other panelists that what we're seeing is the biggest threat is just that there won't be any more geophysicists, because there just aren't any students doing it. So, I mean, Curtin's done a really good job over, you know, 30 years or whatever, producing a really, really good course, really strong, in-depth geophysics course, and lots of successful graduates have come out of it. But even that's not enough to attract, you know, more than a couple the students each year, and as has already been alluded to, that they've been counted at the university just won't let you run a course with only 2 students. So, you know, if we're not producing any geophysicists, then what can we do about it? So there's 2 approaches. I guess someone in the chat's mentioned we can either attract more people to it, or we can educate the people that are already here, or the people who are interested in geophysics. And the question is, you know, the only way to attract people to it is to go out and publicize geophysics, tell people what it's about, show it what it is, because that's how I got into it. Was someone came to my school and gave a presentation and said, this is what geophysics is, and you're thinking, this looks good, travel around, do stuff outside, you know, a bit of technology, it looks interesting. And I think if we got that story out there, then we would attract more students. And the other side of things is, how do we educate people already in the industry, or people who might want to become geophysicists? And I think that's probably, you know, an area where the ASEG could take a leading role. But on the seismic side in particular, I mean, yes, the industry's gone down, and you know, that's reflected in the oil price, but I think the doom and gloom merchants, perhaps it's not gone down as you know, there's still the demand out there for geophysicists, maybe not so many specialist seismic geophysicists, but plenty of opportunities in the near surface realm as well. So, and from the seismic side, I think what we're seeing is that maybe the oil companies aren't interested, but we're seeing a lot of interest from geothermal companies, from people looking to build wind farms. You know, there's a lot of demand out there for understanding what's happening in the subsurface. And although it might not be oil companies, there are plenty of other companies that are interested in doing it. And in some ways, it's a similar marketing thing where we need to get out and show these companies what we can do with geophysics and how it's related to their industry.
Yeah, fantastic. David Pratt in the chat. Oh, sorry, Pete, did you want to comment on that?
Can I just add one thing to this conversation? Excuse me. I think one of the things that we don't do very well, that we should actually, you know, shout from the roof is, you know, lots of the sciences that are popular at the moment, especially around climate change, they're really sciences that document the problem. And so, you know, a climate modeler will, you know, is really important to understand what it's going to look like in the future, etc. But that's really a documentation of the problem. And what we don't do at all is sell the fact that our discipline is a solver of the problem. And so we, you know, you can't fix and mitigate climate change without resources. You can't do it without, you know, understanding how it's going to affect landforms and the critical zone and the subsurface. And so we don't do this at all. And so geologists are the same. We don't say that we are a solver. Mitigating climate change is an earth science, chemistry, physics, and engineering problem. It's not a climate science or even an environmental scientific problem. They're the documenters, and that's important. But we don't express this. And we've got a whole generation of school kids who are very passionate about this topic. You know, so much so that they're happy to march the streets in their hundreds of thousands, and that's an opportunity for us. But we have to have the right message.
Yeah, fantastic. Masayab, I was about to throw to you as communications chair, who's interested in the voice of the ASCG, but also, you know, someone who has some insights into what opportunities you think there are for the profession of geophysics. What are your thoughts on what Pete just said?
Sure. I just wanted to make a comment from my student perspective, Emma, and I think being a student and really having thirst for knowledge, we really need to think of what kind of knowledge students can digest easier compared to, you know, when it comes to really a range of ways you can teach students. And we probably can start with high school students. You probably have heard that some of them, they just read books about geology or geophysics. And I can imagine how boring that would be, just reading books about the geology. So if we think of the way that it could be taught at these schools and bring it back to a high level, would be really the importance of envision of the end game. And if we can really make that happen, I think we can build up interest in the science and in the discipline. And that's absolutely right. I think everyone here agrees that geoscience has been hard hit, and geophysics specifically, you know, has been really hit hard. And we have seen that in the reports recently. Kate Selway in ASEG just showed that in the numbers. And yeah, I think probably if we can, ASEG, if we can really help and build up and advocate for that end game vision, would be a really impactful role for geophysics.
Yeah, fantastic. Anne, I might throw to you in this context of what opportunities, you spoke to it a bit before, but what really do, from your perspective, what do you think the real opportunities for us are in the profession of geophysics? I will get the question out of my mouth eventually.
Yeah. I still feel, I can speak for everyone. In my company and industry at the moment, we're sort of unusually flat out, it seems, despite the current sort of global situation. We still need to explore, we're just going to shift a bit, I feel it's a sideways shift into what we're exploring for. We've got, geophysics, everyone's talking about strategic critical minerals. It's gone beyond just sort of the lithium bubble of a few years ago. It's quite an expansive, I think there's a list, we're talking nickel, copper, all of these sort of requirements that are going to be needed. I've got a colleague in Vancouver who's recently been saying that, those Calgary geophysicists who are not exploring for oil and gas at the moment, suddenly they're looking for, lithium and helium and sedimentary basins. So I think there's opportunities in that respect to sort of, just, it's not really a repurpose, but it's sort of a shift from some of those other traditional energy sources and things like that into these new emerging technologies. I guess it's direct energy as well as all of those, metals and other things that are going to help develop these new technologies that are really going to drive everything moving forward in terms of all these sort of global targets that are being discussed.
Yeah, fantastic. Kate, I'm going to throw to you on this. But what do you think the ASEG should be doing to support these opportunities and to take advantage of them?
Yeah, I think, you know, that there's quite a lot that we can be doing in this space. And I think starting the conversation is a good first step. You know, although this has been sort of something that's been sneaking up on us, it does feel like, you know, very quickly it's become really in our face and that we need to sort of act on this quickly. So, you know, having more of these discussions first to work out kind of exactly where ASEG can play a role. I think, you know, the lack of communication that's about the dirty perception of geophysics and how we actually, you know, as Pete said, how we're actually the solvers of this problem, or one of the professions that can help to solve these problems, you know, how we start to communicate that. And I think we can do this from a number of different ways. One I think that comes to mind that's probably not a conventional one is with, you know, just having, as ASEG members, being able to comfortably have a conversation with the public, with your friends, with your family, or politicians, you know, whoever it might be, to be able to have that conversation comfortably, you probably need to do a lot of sort of background reading, you know, watching a lot of different documentaries and things like that. And I feel like there's a role that the ASEG can play to really sort of simplify that process so that really easily ASEG members can go, okay, these are the key messaging that we need to be delivering. And, you know, even sort of teaching skills as to how to have those difficult conversations. Then I guess the more sort of conventional ones, you know, we need to, I think in different levels, have conversations, you know, with students. I think one of the panelists has mentioned that, you know, they sort of stumbled into geophysics, which I think so many geophysicists end up doing. At school, I had no idea what a geophysicist was. And, you know, Pete mentioned about, you know, you say that that biomedical scientists may just say that they're solving cancer, they'll look at the big picture. And that was one of the things to me, you know, I very nearly enrolled in biomedical science, having never done biology. And, you know, luckily I did not, because I did first year biology at uni and it was terrible. But, you know, how do we show the big picture of what we're actually doing? And so I think, yeah, having some workshops, having some courses, clear messaging to ASEG members, but also to the public would be a really good place to start.
Yeah, we call those the barbecue conversations, which are the ones where you can, you know, turning a couple of snags on the barbie, how you can really change people's minds in those sort of, you know, those contexts.
Yeah, yeah.
Avett, ASCG Treasurer, what's your thoughts on how the ASCG can navigate and support, you know, and deliver on these opportunities?
Thanks, Emma. Thanks, everyone. I really agree with what the other panelists are saying, you know, in terms of the communication. I think us as ISTG members, or some of the, you know, FedEx member and all that, or the geophysicists, you know what you're doing, but you need to let people know how it works, how things work. And one way of supporting it is, you know, in communicating, and it's not only writing papers and all that, it's actually going to the grassroots and talking to people, because sometimes I had the experience of, you know, telling someone, okay, I've wrote this paper, you can read it and then find out what I've been doing, but they wouldn't understand. I think the best way is to actually communicate and use words that they can understand. I have that experience with my family sometimes when we have, you know, like big family meetings. I'll say, okay, today we're going to have a theme. I'm going to talk about my job. What my daughter tells me is that, oh, you construct nice maps, nice images, you know. That's all she can say. I say, no. I've got to tell you exactly what it is. So I think communicating in a way that people can understand exactly what it is. Sometimes there are some technical words that are not easy to understand, but if you're talking to someone who is not from that, that field, then you need to spell it out. And I think it's probably what the ASEG is doing already in terms of giving, providing some scholarship and through the Research Foundation to support some of the students. It's a good thing already. I think what we can do is to go actually within, it can start right from primary school. It doesn't have to be high school actually. Right from primary school. That's when they start to understand. They understand science, they understand medicals and all that. So I think we can also find ways to explain, and attract more kids, get the kids thinking about what is geophysics, what can you do with it, and what does it bring to the economy, what does it bring to the, to the world. So those are the things we can do.
Yeah, I've historically told people my job is to work out what's in the ground without digging a dirty big hole. So maybe not quite making maps, but yeah, that's one of the ways I've tried to simplify the idea of geophysics. Marina and then Anne.
Yeah, I've got a quick one. When I first became a geophysicist, again, I had no idea a long time ago what that was either. One of my first field trips out with CGG, or geotechnics at the time, flying airborne electromagnetics. I was trying to explain to my mum over the phone what I was doing out there with all the guys. And she's in Sydney and I'm in Mount Isa. She got on a plane to come out to see it, because even though I used the most basic language, she just couldn't imagine it. So maybe we need to get people out there to see it. I know videos are great, but nothing like the real life experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Anne.
I was just going to expand on what Avett had said, and in terms of the, not just looking at secondary school education, getting in and having those discussions and awareness around the profession or the discipline at a primary level. I mean, that's I get, as you said in my bio, I'm within the CSIRO STEM professionals group. That was sort of two-phase for me, because I'm not from Perth originally, and I didn't know the education system. So I mean, I've got kids coming in. I love geoscience outreach, so I sort of signed up for that, and luckily I've sort of been having talks inside the primary school. But I'm based in Fremantle in Western Australia. We've got a green kind of hippie feel. They've got a sort of part-time science specialist teacher who's quite, she has her own classrooms to deal with, but they have a dedicated sustainability teacher. So I get my kids coming home, shaming me that I've got a disposable cup. And so I think perhaps, having, maybe embedding inside those groups and having those conversations. My eldest, Dad got picked up in a Tesla Uber the other day to go off to his job, and she couldn't wait to tell his sustainability teacher about it. So maybe using those kind of opportunities, it's made me think now maybe I should go talk to the sustainability teacher about talking to the kids. But also on that, I completely stumbled into geophysics. I think it was 23 years ago. I walked into uni with a piece of paper thinking, well, I know geology. I did a bit of that. I'm from New Zealand. It's, it's earthquakes and volcanoes. I love that, but I was all right at maths and physics. Never even heard about it, even that long ago as a possible career opportunity. So, yeah, I think there's a whole sort of public discussion to be had, and many people say they sort of, oh, how did you get into it? Oh, such and such as mum or dad, or you just had that one connection or that one teacher that was sort of that inspiration to follow it through. I guess the concern is that if you inspire these kids, where are they going to go and learn it? I guess parents, I imagine, I'm not there yet, but when there's looking, when kids are coming in to the end of high school, what am I going to enroll in? Well, if there's nothing to enroll in as well, that's the next question. Why would they follow that through? So there's a few issues there.
I'm going to pick up this question from David Pratt that just came through, because I think it really speaks to one of the issues that I've certainly seen with the ASEG, which is in mineral exploration, we're exploring deeper for next generation deposits, yet our geophysical community appears to be in decline. Have we been sidelined, or is there a progressive migration to other areas of geophysical application during industry lows, such as engineering, environmental, UXO, cultural, archaeology disciplines, most of which did not exist when our society started? Perhaps both. So EEGS is taking on a lot of these members from younger disciplines. Should we consider working more closely with EEGS and other societies to make sure there's a local and supportive society? I think, Ted, I think this is a good question for you to respond to in the context of, you know, what does exploration geophysics mean to you, and is there something that we need to do to think about how we broaden that?
Look, that's a huge question, really. It's an enormous question. What does it mean to me? I think when our society was formed, as I said earlier, it was formed to provide a voice for mineral and petroleum exploration geophysicists. But right at the very beginning of our society, there was also a strong recognition, and there was really active work going on in applying this new discipline of exploration geophysics to dam foundation studies, to groundwater exploration, to a whole range of both small-scale earth analysis and trying to map structures in earth that related to environmental matters, but also applying it to whole of earth geophysics to really understand really understand what are these things called central ocean ridges, expanding plates, and how does geophysics inform all of that? So exploration geophysics it's really a misnomer. It's much more than that, and I think there's a discussion that we need to have, particularly in the light of the discussion in the last half hour about climate change changing business environment across the world. The critical importance of scientists like us of contributing to the discovery of critical minerals, supporting the development of move to low emissions transport systems. Really, we've got to think of a new branding. Branding is really important in our modern world, and not just a brand, but a really descriptive name for our society and really our profession that really resonates with younger people coming through the school systems and into the university.
Yeah, I think that speaks to the question there about whether we do need to go and attract other disciplines, whether we need to expand our idea of ourselves and move beyond what we might have held on to the last 50 years and into something different into the future 50. Pete, did you have any thoughts about that perception and where we need to go and what exploration geophysics means to you?
Well, I mean, without sounding too harsh, I think that if you took the word exploration out to start with, then you'd actually diversify automatically, and you would capture some of these other disciplines. So I was just looking at Kate's graph, Kate Selway's graph on where geophysics is taught, and then I was like, well, that says geophysics, but what of those surviving courses, how many of those are actually exploration geophysics, so applied geophysics, magnetics, gravity, EM techniques, magnetotellurics, and so you can basically take ANU out, which is a third of it. That's a geodynamics school that does global seismicity. That's their thing, right? It's very different to what we're actually talking about. I've been thinking about this one for a while, mainly through my interaction with Ozscope, who basically have been the infrastructure or one of the providers of infrastructure, which includes some of the big partners in some of the, and along with Geoscience Australia in collecting data. We've been very much a nation of imaging the continent, and I think that's one of our most successful attributes, that we are probably the envy of the rest of the world in terms of our understanding of our continent from those amazing acquisitions. And we were doing it a long time ago. I remember when I was an intern at BHP, and I was sticking individual surveys on a wall in spatial coordinates, and built an analog of the geophysical magnetic image of the continent. And they were choosing, in that time, they were choosing where to go and explore on that image that just sort of piecemeal was built over 4 or 5 months. But the reasons to do geophysics are changing from more than just imaging. I think there's going to be a future of geophysics that's monitoring, and that's something that's kind of juvenile at the moment. And so, putting instruments out there and getting a time series data set to understand environmental problems, for example. So one obvious one is groundwater tables, etc. So there's opportunities there. And if we continue using the exploration title, then we're kind of marginalising that group of people that are interested in those types of problems. So I feel like I'm a bit of a bit player in the society. I have been a member for 20 years, but I've not been engaged as well as some of the other people in this panel. But it is something that I do think about a lot, which is, if you took the exploration out, what would happen to the society? Would it grow? Or are we just, the other question to ask is, are we just shuffling a finite number of experts between exploration, environmental, tectonics and seismicity, and doesn't matter which way you cut the cake, you're always just going to end up with a cake, and it's just the different portions and sizes. So we need to think about that as well.
Yeah, you can't expand the pie.
That's right.
Anne, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to expand on that. Words are powerful, even like a single word, and I hadn't really thought about it much until thinking about this. But what was the question? The perception of the name, and I hadn't realised how much exploration does. It sort of does make you sort of tunnel down one way, and it kind of does evoke something, discovering new things. And I guess we're in a sort of a renewable, more sustainable thing. So I can see Bill Peters, my colleague and founder of SGC, sitting at the top there, and he suggests maybe we should have called it the Australian Geophysical Society. I mean, a name change is a huge thing, but even just taking that one word out, it does change that whole thing. And there's certainly, I know in our group we're certainly, expanding how we look at it, and diversifying that and doing a lot more in that environmental, hydrogeophysics, supporting, monitoring, even in the mineral side of it, tailings, storage facilities and things like that. So, I think words are a powerful thing, and subtle changes can actually be pretty big.
Yeah, fantastic. Kate. I think you're still on mute.
Yep. New to Zoom. Yeah, it's something I've been thinking about as well. And I think, as Ted touched on earlier today, that, when the society was created, it was specifically for, minerals, petroleum exploration. And, it's definitely changing. I agree that a rebrand is a good idea. I wonder, perhaps it's not as easy as just getting rid of the word exploration, because, to me, the concept of exploration is a very sort of thrilling part of our industry, and probably to a lot of geophysicists. And maybe it's more about emphasizing the very different interpretations of exploration and the excitement involved with it. Even, the most academic type geophysicists that are, just mapping subduction and past processes, you're still, exploring history. There's, if we had some sort of branding and marketing that were around the various ways that we are exploring, and even sort of exploring into the future with the transition, then maybe that might help as well.
I think that's I think our name what it means for people, what it means for us as individuals, us as a society, as a learned society, plus versus, you know, broader society, I think is really important, and one of the issues we're absolutely going to have to grapple with in the coming years.
Yeah.
Along those lines, Kate, I wanted to just kind of explore a bit further about, so that's maybe one of the things that ASEG needs to reflect on and think about how we do better. What are the other areas that we're actually doing well, and some of the areas in that you think we could improve on?
Yeah, I think, to me, what we're doing really well is the people side of things. You know, we've mentioned the volunteers, and you know, at the moment we've been busy collating a list of all of our volunteers, and we're hoping to sort of, you know, release these names annually to give people the recognition that they deserve. And I think we're at about 200 volunteers, and we've got a society that's got around, you know, 850 members or so at the moment. So, you know, a quarter of our members are volunteers. So, you know, without the people, we definitely wouldn't have the society that we have. So that's definitely something that we're doing incredibly well. I think, you know, Ted's touched on a lot of the points of, you know, how we've been a society for 51 years. You know, the preview, exploration, geophysics, they're all going really well. Our conference that's now transitioned to the AEGC, which has recently had its third successful conference against all odds with the pandemic. The Research Foundation and our branches, you know, that's working really well. All of our branches are very active. And again, even through COVID, managing to deliver events virtually for those cities that are in complete lockdown. So improving on, you know, we've sort of touched on a lot of this already, you know, improving the perception of our society, but also our profession, how we communicate, you know, why we're doing what we do, how we, you know, speak to students. So I think, you know, we're looking to sort of establish an outreach program where, you know, with 850 or so members, we can, you know, if we can provide the tools to ASEG members to go into schools and, you know, easily speak to students or to university students, then, you know, I think that's an easy win in a way. At university level, I know various branches have various levels of engagement with their universities, coming from an SANT branch in Adelaide perspective. I know that where possible, try and have a student or two on the committee and make sure that we're actively engaging with the universities and going in there at the start of the semester, and we put on a barbecue or pizza, you know, various different initiatives, and that really helps, I think, getting students involved with the society and kind of seeing all the cool different career paths that geophysics can take you on. So, you know, trying to make sure that things like that are rolled out across all of our membership. Another area for improvement, which has dwindled off in the last, you know, in sort of recent times, is our international membership pool. I've seen that we've got a few international members here tonight, which is great. Fortunately, our webinars and events like this now make it easier for international members to engage. But, you know, I'd really like to work on how we can do more for our international membership, and really sort of tailor some benefits to our international members who are very loyal to our society and, you know, form a really critical part of our society. Yeah, I think, yeah, and another, I don't really have an answer for this, but it's more a question as to, with the energy transition, you know, how, you know, do we need to be helping geophysicists in the petroleum industry to, you know, repurpose their skills and realign into new industries, and what sort of timescale do we think this transition is going to happen, and when do we need to start thinking about that as a society?
Marina, did you want to add to that conversation?
Thanks. I just wanted to pick up on something that a couple of our panelists have mentioned. We have an awesome membership base, and we have 850 plus the retirees and plus the people who are still in our social or our professional networks. And I think we need to think a little bit bigger than just relying on our society. Our society belongs to the Australian Geoscience Council with up to 8,000 members. And I think there's a lot of power that could be utilised in that forum using across the professional societies. We all have our niche. I think a lot of us are facing the same problems, but how to really turn that narrative around and how to get more students and have more impact, I think we need to rely on our relationship with the other professional societies under an umbrella like the Australian Geoscience Council. We need movers and shakers in that space. Somebody wrote influencers and friends and family, all of that works. But I think if we can open our eyes and look at the other people who are on our team, if you like, that might be also another way to help move this along. Also, Roger stole my E because I was just about to type that as well.
That's fantastic. Mossab, I wondered if you had any perspectives on what you see the ASEG doing well or areas that we could improve in.
Yeah, I think I really love what Marina said in terms of the working with other societies. If I want to just talk about exploration, and that's probably my background is exploration, and geophysics can't really do everything. And we have seen that in oil and gas. If you really want to have a successful project, you probably need to look at every single data that you have at your hand, right? You really need to look at geology. You really need to work with other disciplines to make sure that where you want to drill. And when it comes to minerals, I think that we are probably a little bit behind compared to what oil and gas is doing as a system in place. And yeah, so de-risking all the opportunities are really through integration. And that's where I think we need to integrate a little bit more with the with other societies, and that's where ASEG can have a really enormous role in making that happen, and members really can make benefit of that you know, partnership and being a member of the ASEG.
Yeah, great. Tim, I'll throw to you. What do you see the ASEG doing well or areas we can improve in?
I think I don't want to sound cynical, but I mean, a big shout out to all the volunteers and everything. I mean, I've been on state committees and this sort of thing, and a lot of people put in a lot of effort and come up with some good events. And I think Preview is a really good publication. You know, that I think there's credit there, but I think we have to be very careful that we just don't suddenly just dissolve. I mean, we've already seen the SEG, which is a much bigger organization than we are, start to talk about merging with other societies. And as several people have said, we've got 800 members, but we spend about $100,000 a year on administration. So basically every membership dollar goes straight to paying for the administration of the society. And I just wonder if that's really sustainable with the ever shrinking membership base. So I think, you know, the reality is I think we have to maybe dip into the $1 million or whatever that ASEG has in the bank, and we need to start promoting geophysics generally. We need to start expanding its applications. I know someone mentioned data science, archaeology. We really need to promote that and show what geophysics can do and promote it as a career. So remember, we don't need to recruit hundreds of people. If we got 30 extra students each year, that would probably be enough to get geophysics in a pretty solid place. Part of that, I think, is it's been suggested that, you know, we provide first year scholarships for those people who are sort of on the fence. Let's give them a bit of money and get them over the line and get them into geophysics. You know, I mean, for every dollar you spend trying to promote, maybe that dollar would just be spent, you know, better spent paying for someone to become a geophysicist. On the other side of things, I think we really need to educate people. We need to train people who aren't geophysicists to be geophysicists. And I think this is somewhere where ASEG could play a really key part in running education courses and getting people up to speed. I guess finally, the other point I might raise, and people might not feel good about this one, is basically around professional accreditation. So if you look at AusIMM, for example, they have professional accreditation. So if you want to call yourself, you know, it's almost a requirement to be a member. So if we had that for the ASEG, then it might sound a little crude, but you know, we could, if you wanted to call yourself a geophysicist, then you would have to join the ASEG. And I think, you know, that's something we should definitely be thinking about, at least in my opinion.
Anne, you've got your hand up.
Again. 2 points there, and I'd say to just off Tim's, you know, comment about the administration fees. I would argue, can you not afford to have, you know, a paid, you know, support, you know, and put more load on the volunteers? You know, to me it's a critical part. I'd almost suggest, you know, without going to and you know, you don't want to go to the level of having a very, you know, expensive membership, but you know, in times when you need sort of extra strategy, you know, do you consider having someone in a type of a CEO role with a dedicated, you know, tasked position that they can help really drive and commit? I mean, we have this amazing volunteer base, and that's always a risk, is that, you know, of not getting those people. You know, we all have day jobs, you know, many of us, and we've obviously got a great, you know, those who are sort of retired and semi-retired as well. But yeah, I would argue the other side of the coin and sort of suggest, you know, you don't want to not have that and just rely on that volunteer base.
I've got a flurry of hands, which is fantastic. So I reckon we'll go Tim, Pete, and then Ted. I'd be really interested to hear some of your perspectives on this as well. So let's do that order. Tim, Pete, and then Ted.
No, thanks. I think that's a really good point. Maybe I didn't make myself clear. I mean, I don't think we should definitely not try and make the society self-administrating, but I just think for $100,000 a year, could we not hire someone who could do the administration of a society? Let's face it, has only 800 members, so I'm assuming it's not too difficult. And they could spend their time promoting geophysics, helping organise courses, you know, really getting out there. This is the way I see it. I just see that amount of money and just, you know, maybe it's being spent in other ways on postage and stuff like that. But it just seems like a lot of money for you know, what is maybe a rather basic service.
Pete.
Yeah, I'm having some serious Geological Society of Australia deja vu with this conversation. We have the exact same challenges, and I've been forced to think about our value proposition as a result of, you know, shrinking memberships, increased costs, you know, all the things that this conversation's about, and I've come to the conclusion that division structures are actually really inefficient, and let me explain why. So you've got 200 volunteers. Is that what you said, Kate? Is that roughly, or 400? So you've got 400 volunteers spending time. So let's say there's
200, I think.
Yeah, so some crazy number, and 800 members. So the division structure is really challenging. So I'll use the GSA as an example rather than the ASCG. We might have, in a division, we might have 5 or 6 volunteers who work really hard for 5 to 20 members who show up to the division meeting. You know, there's no, and then the other 800 or 900 or 1,000 members that we've got don't get any benefit from that particular effort, because only the 10 people who showed up to the division meeting get to share that. So, you know, we're exploring models where that other 1,000 members get to share or get to participate in a mechanism for that. And so in some ways it's about thinking about how does a member who can't show up to a division meeting or to a talk or whatever in a local branch engage with your society. You know, that's, you know, part, you know, we know, I can tell you the numbers for us. It was 20% drop off last year, all young people, because they're busy. They got families, they got FIFO, they're all over the place. And, you know, you go, well, now you got to drive into Melbourne and 40K and show up to a 2-hour meeting. People can't do that. So you got to, you know, the value proposition has to be thought about in different way. And so it's just, I'm just putting it out there to think about the way we structure up our societies. I think they're perfectly built for 1996. That's my argument. And in 2021, they're poorly structured. And that's about the way people interact with their societies around them. Anyway, I'll stop there and let everyone mull on that issue for a while.
I think we'll still go Ted, Avett, Kate, Anne. We've got a lot of, this is a popular topic. Go, Ted.
Perhaps if I just first address the matter of administrative services to the ASEG, and the ASEG supervises the contracts. We've got advisors from the association, we've got a contract with publisher Taylor and France. We have contracts for other services. We've got contracts with conference providers, etc. And we're really rigorous in going to tender and assessing on a monthly basis, a yearly basis, if we're getting value for money on this. And we recently did a review of the administrative services, and I've been up very close and personal to this on the amount of work involved. And I can tell you that for our society, it's at least a 2-person job, day in, day out, 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year, dealing with the administration work of the society. It's not just dealing with posting hard copies, but society doesn't do that. Our publisher does that for us. You have to also remember that not-for-profit companies have really come under a lot more scrutiny from ASIC. We're running a company, not just a professional society. So the rigour around the management of financial disbursement, incomes of the income from the different areas, diversity of income, documentation of that, auditing processes, the rigorous body of work to be done. It's more than one person can do. And what we've done over the last 5 years, 8 years, we've really honed that down to as lean as we can possibly get, using a professional association provider. So that's not to say we couldn't do it another way, as Tim has suggested, look at hiring somebody, but from my very close experience, it would need to be more than one person to do the work. And the critical thing is they've got to be an all person, they've got to be financially specialist to be able to manage all the audit processes and reporting to ASIC, as well as doing the day-to-day answering the phones and dealing with membership applications and those sort of things. So that's one thing. I'm really, really pleased that there's a whole lot on the chat line around the name of the society and how we might evolve it. But one thing that nobody's mentioned that I really want to press is that our society, just as the SEG has been named as the Society of Exploration Geophysicists. Over my experience over many decades in the exploration sector, there are many people that are more generalists that would love to see what we're doing, but haven't joined because this is a club of geophysicists. If we renamed our society around the discipline, the geophysics, with whatever qualifiers we think is appropriate, the Australian Society of Geophysics, or how we want to expand it, it puts us in a really different of attracting scientists who want to hear about the latest technologies around Earth imaging, remote sensing mapping, climate science. We're using remote sensing, geophysical mapping to look at catchment systems, all of that sort of thing around climate systems. So I think there's a really strong, I have a really strong desire to see the name of the society emerge into a geophysics society in some sort of form. And I'd be very reluctant to see, as Kim Frankham, I can see on the chat line, let go of our name around exploration. Exploration is very evocative. It's exciting, and it's certainly what brings a number of young people in. But let's look at the opportunity to, in the next year or two, to rethink this. I think we'll get really good buy-in from our membership about how to take this forward. And let's also talk about this across the 8 other geoscience organisations that we're partners with through the Australian Geoscience Council, including GSA, Peter.
Fantastic. Avett, as ASCG Treasurer, what's your insights into all of that conversation?
Yeah, I appreciate all what has been said. As a treasurer, I spend a lot of time looking at numbers, some that I don't understand all the time, but and looking at the work that the Secretariat does, and I agree with Ted. I want to agree with Ted here that they do a lot of work, and don't forget that we are all volunteers. So us as volunteers, we have our own jobs, we have families, we have other things to do, and I wouldn't really recommend that we take up again an extra load on us. So the task, the association specialists, they do a lot of work, and it's not a one-person job. When we have communication, us at the FedEx, we have a lot of communication with tasks, and it's not only one person who sends messages. It's all around. They have a team. And so you can appreciate that if one person was to do that job, it would probably be a lot. In terms of the amount of money that we spend for it, I won't comment too much on that, but I think it's very well balanced with the job that they are doing. I think we spend a lot of time reviewing the contracts and all. That is something that us, the 4 directors of the FedEx, we spend some time reviewing the contracts and seeing what they were doing to make sure that it's good value for money, but that we're not also stressing them and putting a lot of load on them. So that's on that part of it. Now, I would like to comment a little bit about when we're talking about how we reach out to the other societies and all that. I think we have a kind of niche, and if you want to make it as a global society, then people don't really feel like they belong to that society. It becomes a bit more wider. My preference would be to stay in that kind of niche, but it doesn't mean that we don't interact with other societies. We can interact with them, but keep our own niche there. And I agree with Mosaeb when he was saying that integration is also a key, because you do geophysics, yes, you do your interpretation, but you still need geology, you still need the other parts, the other data. So you need to be able to put all that together. And that's where the collaboration with the other societies comes in. So we can still be who we are and then collaborate with others without losing our identity. So I fear that if we go too global, we may have to lose our identity. One last comment that I wanted to make. Yeah, I think I'll stop there. I'll stop there for now. Give someone else the opportunity.
Perfect. Thank you, Avett. Kate, you've got your hand up, and then we'll go to Anne.
Yeah, just thinking more about the paid Secretariat, and Emma and I have discussed this, and I probably prompted this conversation as a heavily overworked person. I'm sure Pete can relate, full-time employee, and then essentially a full-time president as well. I think, the role of the Secretariat is critical. I've just noticed Tim's comment about, how can we simplify that? Maybe we could have a look at it, the roles that are being done, and if there are anything that we can eliminate. I think delegating anything is very hard, but, if there were tasks that end up being redundant, and one of the things we are actually looking at is how we sort of, if anyone's familiar with the sort of the Sigma 6 or the lean methods, making all your processes as streamlined as possible so that we're you know, we've got efficiency in all of our tasks, and, you know, anything that volunteers are doing as well. We want their time to be used in the most economical way. Yeah, so Emma and I have talked about, you know, what if you had a model where you could pay someone to have a career break for a year? And to me, you know, like, I absolutely love my role volunteering with the ASEG, and there's so many things I want to do, but there's so few hours in the day when it comes down to it. And like Emma said, you know, we end up meeting for several hours first thing in the morning on a Sunday because we are so passionate about it and there's so much we want to do, but where do you actually fit it in? And so that's another thing that I wouldn't mind looking into, how you have a secretariat to do the admin things that don't need the skill of a geophysicist or understanding of the profession, and how you can have someone who is a geophysicist actually supplement that in a paid way.
Anne.
I wanted to peel back to the comment about professional accreditation. This is something that, you know, I was on the AIG board and the membership council there, although there was a separate committee group, I guess, that did the, you know, the AIG have the RPGO, so the Registered Professional Geoscientists, although NEM have their chartered professionals. I know at the time that I was on the council, GSA were thinking about, and obviously now executed, you know, they've got their own, you know, accreditation as well, and to sort of throw another one in the mix, which I believe may actually be prohibited anyway under the constitution of the ASEG in terms of being a learned society. It's a bit different, so I'm not sure if that's possible, but I kind of wonder what the, you know, there's three already, you know, a fourth throwing into the mix is a hard one to understand. The questions around, you know, we don't need it in many respects in Australia. I mean, there's certainly parts of the world, like in Canada, the US, where at a province or state level, you know, you must be a registered professional. I think the Philippines has something similar as well. I do know that one of the requirements out of sort of the engineering side of things, so for a lot of that, speaking to the AIG, when you get into engineering, there were many engineering geologists who could not become members of Engineers Australia, yet through a lot of their contracts and that they did need to have sort of some kind of professional accreditation, so there's the requirement there. So it was more sort of general comments about, you know, sort of duplication of something that effectively sort of acts similarly, and I suppose that leads on to also this idea of working, you know, as Marina said, sort of the AGU level, AGC, you know, their council with 8,000 members. I think there's some aspects of what we do that definitely would be better served in a collaborative way rather than, you know, in our own little silos.
Yeah, fantastic. Team, I think that might be us for tonight in terms of time. I think we heard a lot of really interesting perspectives and insights, thoughts on how we change our voice and communicate and how we connect, how we brand ourselves and you know, communicate our identity to the broader you know, to other geophysicists that are not a part of the ASEG at the moment, as well as society at large. We've heard about how we think about our value proposition and how we create the right environment to sustain our volunteer base, which is such an incredible part of our history and our future. And I think we just heard that, yes, there are absolute headwinds that we are facing as a society, but there is significant opportunity for us to lean into. We just need to dive into what are those root causes and then, you know, make the right decisions as a society using that that business you know, acumen that we have leveraged in the last 50 years and apply it to how we run this this not-for-profit business into the future. So I took a lot away from tonight. Thank you so much to all the panelists. Thank you to everyone at home who joined in the discussion in the chat. I'm sorry we didn't get round to everyone's questions, but I make a commitment that we'll collect them up and look to use them as the basis of our next discussion that we will need to have as a society. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. I just grateful for the panelists' time and effort in preparing for tonight, and also your time and effort for joining in and being a part of the conversation. So team, here's to the next 50.